going on, guys? This is Max from the Editing Bay. I just wanted to make a quick note to tell you about how stupid I am. I wrote this entire essay not knowing that Steamboat Willie was due to enter the public domain in 2024. It's in the public domain. You can use it for whatever you want. So just bear that in mind. I wanted to cover it more, but I just wanted to get this video out. So there's other people who talk more specifically about Steamboat Willie. This is more of an ode to the public domain in general, and not specifically about Disney's public domain entry. So there you go. Here it is.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Let's start this video off by saying that I am not a lawyer. I took 2 law classes in college and I still can't stop talking about it. This is not legal advice. I have no savings, I have no future, and I'm a very poor role model. This is just an overview of a topic that I found to be interesting and wanted to know more about, and I felt like sharing it with all of you. So if you're watching, thanks. Be sure to subscribe for more future videos. Let's hop right into it. Let's hop right into it. Do you hear that delightful music playing? That, my friend, is the voice of the public domain. It's free. I can do whatever I want with it. And so can anyone else. That means it's mine, but not really. It's kind of ours, collectively. You know, we should get this out of the way. What does the public domain actually even mean, according to Wikipedia? The public domain consists of all the creative work to which no exclusive intellectual property rights apply. Those rights may have expired, been forfeit, expressly waived, or may be inapplicable. Whatever that means. Because no one holds the exclusive rights, anyone can legally use or reference these works without permission. As examples, the works of William Shakespeare, Ludwig van Beethoven, L. Frank Baum, Leonardo da Vinci, Georges Méliès, Vincent van Gogh, are in the public domain either by virtue of their having been created before copyright existed, or their copyright term having expired. And like Caesar and Virgil existed before the saving grace of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, those artists from whom we draw so much of our modern lexicon are doomed to eternal agony in the first layer of hell. Limbo. Limbo. That's what the public domain really is. It's a realm where creative works either go to die, to be rediscovered, or exploited with no expectations, no consequence. They either languish in obscurity, or they're picked apart by the buzzards for any scrap of relevant theme or feeling that can be dressed up again and made to profit. Using works from the public domain to garner profit from is a bit like necromancy. It's the intellectual property necromancy is what you're doing. I mean, there's a reason why we hear classical music so often reproduced and used everywhere. It's because no one has to pay for it. Well, that's not exactly true. See, you don't have to die for your work to be a part of the public domain. You can actually just let it be in the public domain. There's no rules that say you have to maintain rights of ownership. You can release it into the public domain like catching a little thought trout and unhooking it and throwing it back into the great thought stream. That is so dumb. As a copyright holder, you are allowed to determine whether or not you have exclusivity over your own creative work. One of your rights over a work is to transfer control or to relinquish control over it, to let it slip into the great beyond via a written instrument or a contract, transfer your ownership to someone else, or to throw it to the wolves. If you've ever wondered why the artwork of Keith Haring is absolutely everywhere, it's no coincidence, because Keith Haring's work is in the public domain for all of us to use. Just look at these stylish handbags you can buy. The dogs are my favorite. The dogs are my favorite. See, with just a small Google search, you can find that. Oh. See, the first result is from the Haring Foundation, Haring.com, not to be confused with Herring.com, my absolute favorite canned fish supply co. When I clicked through their licensing page, it brought me to another page explaining that the foundation uses Haring's artwork licensing to benefit the Keith Haring Foundation, and that money goes to children in need, those affected by HIV/AIDS, which Haring sadly passed from in 1990. So I'll go into a good cause. I appreciate that someone is using his intellectual property for good. So wait a minute. Where did I hear that Keith Haring had put all of his artwork into the public domain? It must be a common enough myth for other people to also believe it, because it was a top Google search when I was looking into it. As far as I can remember, he allowed all of his work to pass into the public domain to be available to all before his death. I think this is a common misconception, because he kind of had this idea of art being for everyone. I mean, he was a street and graffiti artist, so that kind of gives you an impression of a lot of his work style. I was able to find a few scraps that he'd released some of his artwork into the public domain. So now I was on a list for his. Now I was on a hunt for a list of his works. Except there really isn't one. And I checked BuzzFeed and Cracked.com. His work has been featured in some incredibly famous galleries all over the globe, but he has no official catalog raisonné. No official catalog raisonné. He has no master list of his artwork, no critical catalog. And how could you with someone like Haring? I mean, his medium largely consisted of impermanent street installations. So back when Haring was alive, and sometimes still today depending on which station you go to, in New York in the subway, there's these big black boxes that are sort of laid out as advertising space. And he used to use chalk on these and paint, or draw a picture. And it was just art, and it was just chalk, so it would just get washed away. It's pretty difficult to have a critical catalog of every work you've ever done when a lot of your work just gets spray painted over or washed down or whatever by whatever maintenance worker happens to be in the subway that day. And with someone as prolific as Haring, he probably had thousands of pieces destroyed by maintenance workers through the years that he was active. To complicate matters further, the Haring Foundation has actually stopped authenticating Haring's work in 2012 after a very close-shave lawsuit with 9 Haring collectors. The foundation allegedly refused to label their purchased works as authentic without even looking at any provenance information. This in turn destroyed their whole collection's value, which at that time was a loss of $40 million. Reasonably, they were pissed. This was a narrowly avoided disaster, and as the case was ended in their favor, the Haring Foundation stopped authenticating Haring's work to focus more on their charity efforts, which is legalese for, I don't ever want to get involved in a lawsuit again, so let's just say, okay, we're not doing it anymore. This was such a shock in the art world, it actually sent the Warhol Foundation packing up their authentication practice also. They saw the absolute legal shitstorm and they wanted nothing to do with it. So just remember, if you see anything Keith Haring related, a handbag, it's always reusable shopping bags. So just remember, if you see anything Keith Haring related, it's either an authorized direct copy or it's a soulless ripoff of a legendary queer icon's work. Reported, banned. You lose. You fell off. Not based. Not goated. Blue-pilled. But let's get back to the point. All this digging around in Haring's work had me thinking, how did he put his work into the public domain? Did he just declare it?
I declare
my work into the public domain. Do you have to fill out a form? Or do you just toss your work to the dogs and say, eat up shills, here's some fun prints you can use for your Etsy shop? Well, I looked into it, and I refreshed myself.
bruh.
Don't say that. There are several ways in which a work can enter the public domain according to the Stanford Copyright and Fair Use Center. four most common ways are: your copyright expires. For works made before January 1st, 1924, sorry, your copyright is expired. For works created after 1977, if the work is written by one person, that expires 70 years after the author's death. This is so that the author can make money on their work. I mean, that's sort of the whole point of copyright. We kind of treat everything like property, and so treating a creative work like property legally is a way for us to benefit financially from it. 70 years after the author's death is when the copyright slips into the public domain. If it's made by more than one person, so if like a team works on a project and they all share the copyrights, that's 70 years after the last surviving author dies. Number 2, the owner fails to renew their copyrights. Depending on the circumstance, you can renew your copyright to extend it or not, and if you fail to renew it, then sorry. Number 3, copyright law does not protect your type of work. So for example, if you're writing a scientific paper, facts and theories are not copyrightable. Neither are short phrases like "show me the money" or "slap my ass and call me Sally." They're not copyrightable because they're too short. You know, you can't copyright the word "the." Number 4 is dedication. This is the one I'm the most interested in for this video. Dedication is when the author or authors specifically state within the work that it is to be put in the public domain. So right now in this video, if I were to say, this video essay is now in the public domain, then it would be a part of the public domain. But it's not, because I was just saying that as an example, and I didn't mean it. And if you take this out of context and use this content as if it's in the public domain, I'm going to sue. Another way to purposefully send your work into the great beyond is to just not protect it. You can just let people steal your work, which brings up a lot more questions for me. I mean, what if someone steals your work and then, like, you just can't be bothered to protect it, or you don't know that it's being stolen? Does that mean that you're just a spineless worm who needs to grow a pair and stand up for yourself and be a man, just like my dad used to tell me? Or does that mean you forfeit all rights to your work? At what point do you lose ownership over your intellectual property? And at what point are you just like a pushover? And the best answer that I have is, it depends. This sort of thing all depends on the context of the situation. I know it's lame, but it's the most realistic take. Like most gray areas, if there haven't been cases to discuss the exact situation that's been stated in the past, then it's kind of all up in the air. If you clearly are breaking copyright law, then yeah, like if you know it's copyrighted and you use it and you profit off it, that's pretty cut and dry. But there's a lot of gray areas that the deeper you dive into it, the more apparent they become. I think this idea implies that unless you're a ruthless, litigious protector of your intellectual property, that, sorry man, it's just a dog-eat-dog world. Just a side note, it's not dog-eat-dog world. I mean, what would that even mean? The whole world is filled with dogs? I mean, that sounds adorable. I mean, the people want great gnashings of fangs, and they're gonna get it. You know, to truly describe the heinousness of what's going on, we need dogs eating each other. Imagine a dog eat, oh. I've never seen a dog eat another dog. I don't know where this phrase came from. It's really disturbing to imagine. Let's move on. I get really frustrated with people making mistakes in common phrases. Maybe that's a video I can make in the future. But let's get back to the public domain. A lot of really great work is in the public domain. I mean, every piece of work in the United States pre-1924 is in the public domain. That alone is a body of work that could never be covered in 1,000 lifetimes, let alone just one. And the context alone that those works existed in are a fading tapestry, extending ever outward, further into time's horizon. I have an amazing fact for you. Every time you take a photo, every time you write a story, every time you write a paragraph, every time you doodle a little drawing in the margin of your notebook, like a little preteen girl, and then you pass that note to your little friend while we're taking a test, whoa. Every time you do that, you own a copyright on that work. Every photo in your phone, every shopping list, it's all yours to sell, to give away, do whatever you want with it. And if someone else does something with it without your express permission, you can sue them. That's if you can prove that you own it and also that they stole it. But it's pretty incredible that the United States protects you indiscriminately without even knowing what your work is. And it's a pretty heady philosophical bit of law that gets incredibly complex pretty quickly. I took 2 courses in college specifically about IP, so I pretty much know what I'm talking about. You can register a copyright too, but it costs money and it mainly allows you to sue for more damages if a case goes to court, and it gives you guaranteed proof of existence if your work is on file with the US government. I mean, you don't have to go through the back logs and find a little dated scrap of paper. They have it, they know. Otherwise, the burden of proof is on you to prove that it was your work before it was stolen. You've probably also definitely committed copyright infringement. In fact, I can almost guarantee anyone between the ages of 20 and 40 have almost certainly come into contact with illegally downloaded. This next part of the video is satire, and if anyone's watching, it's not true. My brother and I used to hop on piratebay.com when we were 12 and 14, and we used to grab thousands of gigabytes of music for free, and we never got caught by it. The hard drive that contains hundreds of gigabytes of illegally downloaded music, owned by Warner Records and many other media conglomerates, is hiding in my basement. Today's modern equivalent of this that kids are probably doing now is hopping on Movies 123 and catching a major Trojan on their dad's laptop. I just wanted to do a quick side tangent about this. 123movies.com forever holds a dark place in my heart, because one time when I was in college, I was watching Christmas Vacation, movie that I love, with a bunch of my buddies from college. And we were watching it on Movies 123 because none of us had access to streaming at the time. And we watched the entire movie up until the climactic moment where Cousin Eddie brings back Clark's boss to his house and kidnaps him, and they're about to make up and he's about to get a bonus, blah, 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 what have you. And the movie just stops.
Bruh.
It was the end of the file. Dude, you're gonna play me every conflict in this movie and then just not let me finish. Anyway, 99% of people will never be caught infringing copyright. Internet piracy is a conversation for another video, but even without knowing it, you've probably infringed on someone else's copyright. Like when you go to Google and you just rip any old photo from wherever and then you use it in a PowerPoint, and there's a really good chance that that photo was copyrighted material. And if it is, and you use that PowerPoint at work, and that PowerPoint presentation is so good, your boss pats you on the back and gives you a Christmas bonus, well, that's probably copyright infringement. The big reason why this is rarely an issue is straight up just because the original owner doesn't know, or doesn't care, or doesn't really understand copyright laws, and the gain that anyone else makes from their work is probably not enough to be worth an entire lawsuit. And just talk to George Harrison about that. Wait, you can't. He's dead. The stress of the My Sweet Lord Chiffon's lawsuit killed him. That's another video topic we could do. But let's touch on something else intrinsically tied to property of all kinds, not just intellectual property. And that's the system in which personal property ownership is paramount. Capitalism. In a society that is so hell-bent, so utterly transfixed on ownership and the gathering of physical possessions, it is nearly impossible to remove ourselves from the context of profit. The idea of releasing something to the public without exploiting it for money, it doesn't register for us. It's seen as something that just makes no sense, even when we're told by our constituents that creative work is not really valuable, or, why would it matter anyway? You're never gonna make any money off this. Son, you're a disappointment for playing all this music. Why are you trying to play music? I need you to move out. Can I borrow $20? Sorry, that just became a me thing. But as H. Bomber Guy points out, creative work is inherently valuable. Otherwise, no one would need to steal it from other people in order for them to profit off of it. And also, there would be no system in place to protect creative work. Maybe from the artist's perspective, it just doesn't make sense to release art into the public domain, except as a means of meta art. The relinquishing of control becomes entangled into the piece itself. But this is tough to justify, especially if you're an artist who spent years honing their craft or even working on one piece. How can you just let it slip into the great beyond and not make any profit off it? And worse, see other people possibly make a profit off of it. If it's in the public domain, you're free to sell it or do whatever you want with it. It seems blasphemous. Artists have to eat too. The fucked up thing about all this is that there's so much good work in the public domain. It's not just an endless ocean of outdated crap. It's not a landfill where work goes to rot away. It has so much to offer us as citizens. You know, I absolutely love Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin movies. The silent movies, to me, have such an ineffable charm. I mean, they're from a totally different era, but the jokes still land. I laugh out loud at the slapstick in them. And I know that people roast slapstick and they treat it like it's not important. And that's another video that I can work on because I love slapstick. I think it is hilarious. I will defend it till my death. I think these movies are incredibly entertaining by today's standards. It feels like the reading a book of movies. You have to really pay attention in a different way visually to catch everything that's going on, or else you might miss a gag even if you blink for a second. Movies like Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times feel so relevant even 100 years later. God damn, how are we still dealing with economic depression, job instability, anti-union efforts, and cops being dicks? At least back then, we could honk their nose, slide between their legs, and run away while some crazy ragtime plays. Nowadays, you just end up on Facebook live stream. Imagine Charlie Chaplin going up on the machine in Modern Times to repair it, and the live leak symbol appears above his head. The public domain is a resource meant for the public. It is a public service as important as the libraries that house our troves of art, or our schools, or our roads. Being able to access media that no longer has the burden of needing to be financially viable is such a blessing in an era that is trying its hardest to jam advertisements down your little throat every second of every day. Billboards and targeted dick pill ads and something else. Having content that is no longer commercially viable to its creators is such an amazing thing. I watched a guy have a house fall around him for free. That wasn't a camera trick. He just did that. He just stood there. Don't even get me started on the train. The locomotive video. Once that was explained to me, I almost can't watch it. It's I know that he makes it out fine and alive, but it's like, oh my god, he's nuts. For a 10-second gag. The consequences of his potential error in that bit is death and dismemberment, and he did it for like a 10-second clip. Sometimes very clever business venturists will take a currently copyrighted work and they will change it just enough to be non-infringing, but still kind of within the same niche enough to be predictably successful. I mean, that's kind of where you get like spoof movies from the 2000s and Hallmark Christmas movies that use the same formula over and over again, even though nobody watches them except to make fun of them. And I think there's a lot of great derivative work, but it feels to me like the exception and not the rule. With works in the public domain, they don't have to be changed. They don't have to have their music removed for YouTube's algorithm, or re-edited to remove parts, or sped up by 1.25 to avoid a cease and desist notice. One of my favorite movies, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, is based on the Odyssey by Homer, which of course is in the public domain. Homer's been dead for 10 trillion years or whatever. And when people are clearly copying it, they don't have to hide it. They can be open about the fact that it is inspired by a classic tale. Maybe the public domain isn't limbo. Maybe it's a final resting place for artistic works to just be what they really are. To just come out of the closet. Maybe if capitalism is a type of hell, then the public domain is a type of media heaven, protected by the United States government. You could never see every piece of work made that was once someone's copyrighted material. It's an endless ocean of work that includes every scrap of media that's ever existed. It's a true Tower of Babel. We're only exponentially making more and more copyrighted material as technology advances. Every painting, every photograph of every painting, every piece of artwork on a can of beans in the garbage, every scrawled phallus on a bathroom wall, they're all, for the most part, copyrighted works, or copyrighted works that are now in the public domain. And if every work that isn't protected well enough becomes a part of that domain, then we must learn to become masters of our domain.
I'm out.
Things that are left abandoned are the things that can teach us most about our culture. Whether you're looking at the abandoned city of Chernobyl to learn about the nuclear disaster, or whether you're looking at the mountains of plastic in landfills that will be around for millennia after we are gone, or scraps of photographs of loved ones tucked away in the attic, forgotten for decades. These things get preserved because they really have no financial use to those who enjoy them. I mean, those are the things that end up getting saved, little scraps that aren't really worth money, but they mean something sentimental to us. Most things get preserved because they are no longer of financial use to those who enjoyed them. The public domain is useful because it is not financially valuable. That makes only the things really worth checking out shine through. If something is still enjoyed even when there is zero financial benefit to the watcher or to the creator, it really speaks volumes to its impact on both. The reason you see the great Van Gogh experience popping up in cities near you all the time is because his work is no longer copyright protected. And the carnival tent owners and projector enthusiasts can both be pleased to have to pay no royalties to the poor, depressed, dead genius they owe their livelihoods to. I know some video essayists have more in-depth things to say about that. Check out Broey Deschanel's critique of the great Van Gogh experience if you're interested. And also check out this video about how Van Gogh may have not committed suicide after all. But does anyone abandon their copyrights on purpose for any other reason besides just being an edgelord? Vice author Dave Fagundes shares an interesting perspective on the public domain in the context of other physical ownership rights. But even if you recognize yourself as a copyright owner, the incentives to abandon unwanted copyrights are minimal. Unlike your old couch, the copyright in that photo you took of last week's Poke Bowl, or the shaky concert footage you bothered to record a month ago, impose no ongoing cost of ownership. Copyrights are intangible legal rights. They don't take up space. Unlike patents or trademark registrations, there are no fees associated with maintaining copyright ownership. And who knows? Maybe that concert footage will turn out to be worth some money someday. So why bother abandoning it? Very true, Dave. I guess there are no real reasons to abandon a copyrighted work after all, except to just be a little edgy, a little cool. It's not like Marie Kondo-style decluttering. Lots of copyrighted work takes up little or no space, especially if you work today in a medium like writing or photography, and it's automatically copyright protected unless under very specific circumstances. Copyright, after all, is a protective measure. Of course, like any other government-backed set of rights, it is abused by megacorporations, and corruption's all the same. Disney is one of the worst offenders, with their lobbying of copyright and trademark law in order to extend the chokehold they have over our favorite unnamed mouse friend. But that's a video for another time, and I don't want to get demonetized or cease and desisted. I hope you enjoyed our long, luscious... I hope you enjoyed our luxurious stroll down public domain lane today. There's a lot of subtopics I could make future videos about if you're into that sort of thing. But for now, I'd like to make an announcement. Henceforth, I declare this video to be a part of the United States public domain. All the other countries can kick rocks. You may use it as you wish in perpetuity. with zero consequences. I will not hound you, even if you edit me into the most humiliating, embarrassing situations and use my likelihood, but only for this video. And if you use any other of my videos as if they're in the public domain, I'll find you. I'll put all my sources in the description, all the video links that I wanted to share. So like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time when I contemplate what I'm going to do with the rest of my day. I'll see you next time.